Welcome, everyone. Kath in Bali. Are you in Bali? Somebody coming to us from Bali? I don't think so. I don't know, she doesn't have her screen on. Okay.
Yes, I am in Bali, Venerable.
In Bali, Indonesia.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh, how is it there?
I live here. How is it?
Okay, wonderful. A place I've always wanted to go. So I was headed there when I met Rinpoche. So I never got there. Okay, great.
Well,
Thank you for
I'm trying to get my
welcome.
screen off, but greetings, and it's nice to meet you in cyberspace
What
anyway.
wonderful to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Great. Okay. So we're going to start with our opening prayers to, again, have support for us to talk about emptiness right now and what we normally do with the teaching prayers. Thank you so much. Let's hope I can share my screen. Yes. Glad that worked. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to shorten some of what these prayers so we can read the Heart Sutra, because that's the shortest rollout of the formidable Prajna Paramita Sutra, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And that's the shortest version of it that talks about emptiness. The Prajna Paramita is a female emanation of the Buddha, wisdom, divine wisdom. So wisdom is always represented as the feminine, because we know women are very wise, right? And then often the masculine side, your right side's kind of the method, your bodhicitta, that energy to get enlightened, how we're going to get enlightened. And the wisdom is our view that we want to have to help us get enlightened. So let's imagine again, once again, Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of us. And whatever image we see here, they're all emanations, manifestations of the enlightened consciousness. And asking the Buddha to bless our session so that we can have a little bit more understanding, that it goes a little deeper into those more subtle imprints in the mind. Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. We'll just read that one time through. When, O Supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path is sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated, who all shall show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I was going to shorten that, but I decided not to. It's so helpful to do that. Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, also called the Heart Sutra. So really think about this. Again, the sutras can be obscure at times when it says form is emptiness, emptiness is form is not other than emptiness. So it's helpful to get a commentary, an explanation of what does this sutra mean. It's a whole separate class like that. Okay, let's just think about the words, and you can actually visit. Some of you have visited. Jack, did you go to Rajgir on the trip? Yeah, so you just went there. Great blessing. So Rajgir, and it says it right here in the beginning, Vulture's Mountain is outside of Bodh Gaya, India. And this is where the Buddha taught the Heart Sutra. So it's beautiful to go there. You do a day trip, and then you go to Rajgir, you hike up, and there's a little section there, a little square. And what happens is there's many pilgrimage groups that are coming to read the Heart Sutra there. So you have to kind of, you can't just hang out there all day. You read, and then you have your little time, and then you leave, and then another group comes and takes the spot, and then near there is Nalanda Monastery. So you can visit the ruins of Nalanda, and more ruins over the years have been uncovered of Nalanda. It's an extensive monastic education system from like the 2nd to the 12th centuries. And, it's like a Cambridge or Oxford or something like that, Harvard or Yale type of place where a lot of our masters went. So it's very moving to go to Rajgir, right? And to hike up and read the Heart Sutra there. And to think about when we're there, when I'm leading a pilgrimage, I often mention to people, just imagine that the Buddha is giving this discourse and the entire surrounding area is just filled with monastics, mostly monastics getting this discourse, and then lay people. And maybe we were there in a past life. If you go, maybe you're, creating yet another imprint like that. So let's read together. I prostrate the Arya triple gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagawan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? So basically you've got Shariputra. So the Buddha is in meditative absorption there. So it's Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara having this conversation, but it's really the Buddha through his meditative absorption that's answering. So it's also interesting when Shariputra says, how should any son of the lineage, okay? And then he said that, the next verse, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of infinite compassion, said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. And then he comes back with not only son, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage, okay, who wishes to practice the activity, so we can read together, of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. 5 aggregates, your body and mind. 1 form aggregate, 4 mental aggregates. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Okay, so form, the fact that you arise in dependence on other things, that's your form. That exists. That's conventional reality. Well, the only way things can exist is they come from other things. Okay, so but that form lacks any inherent nature. Okay, so and that form, emptiness is form. Emptiness You never have emptiness without dependent origination. It cannot be without inherent nature, okay, if it doesn't arise in dependence on other things, if it's not a dependent arising. They always go together. Emptiness, dependent arising. Emptiness means it's not frozen in time and space. It's made up of parts, comes from causes and conditions, things like that. So if form is empty, emptiness is form. Welcome. Emptiness is not other than form. Let's go on. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. That's what makes up your mind. All those things they mentioned. So form is first your body, and then the other four aggregates: feeling, which is simply pain, pleasure, neutral. It's not emotion, it's pain, pleasure, neutral. Okay. Then further, the mind has a discriminatory awareness. Okay. Compositional factors, things like love, hate, memory, things like that. And then consciousness, moments of mind. That's your, so four aggregates of the mind, one of form. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra, the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra, the perfection of wisdom, is declared. Tayata. Om Gate, Gate, Para Samgate, Bodhi Soha. So this is about to the one gone beyond, fully beyond, totally beyond, all the different levels of enlightenment are all contained in that verse. You can have a whole teaching on that. Very powerful mantra. And some years ago, when I was at a center in California, we had different staff people would have certain projects that they wanted the staff maybe to participate, or we'd have like a charitable thing that we decide the center's going to offer money, something. So one staff member found a farm sanctuary in Utah where they save farm animals, and you could make an offering that would be the life of that farm animal. So it would always be taken care of for the rest of its life, the food, medical treatment. And so there were different animals, and then we chose this goat. And we decided the center and some of the staff, some of us were going to contribute. And you got to name your animal. So this was the name we gave the animal, this mantra. And we wrote it down and we sent it to them. And then we said, we know it's long, but maybe if you can once in a while have somebody say it to the animal, and they were very sweet. They were very nice. We heard back from them. They said, well, like that. And I was thinking, Rinpoche had a dog named Om Mani Padme Hung. So that's the mantra of the Buddha of compassion. Om Mani Padme Hung. Most people know that mantra. It's one of our simplest mantras. I think I told this story before. And so again, there's significance in the animal hearing that. There can be some imprints, at their level. So there are things, say to insects. Rinpoche used to say some of the sutras we read, he said, you can sit outside and read it. So the insects, the birds hear it. Like, why not? Like that. be helpful to send that out, especially the more faith you have. So Omani Padme Hum was the name of the dog, and a friend of mine was working in Rinpoche's garden. And did I told this story before? I think that.
Did it, I love it.
I think, yeah, it was fun. And a couple guests came to see Rinpoche, and they went through the garden, and my friend greeted them, and the dog was there, a big dog. And then they went in the house, and then they came back out, and my friend showed them around, and the dog tagged along, and they pet the dog, and like that. So then they left, and then Rinpoche came out, typical Rinpoche. And he came out and he said to my friend, what did they do, or asking something, and she started saying, Rinpoche, I showed them the garden, and Mani, so the dog had a nickname, Mani, means jewel, but the name was Omani Padme Hum. And she said, and we went around with the dog, and we, and Rinpoche said, did you tell them the dog's name? Did you tell them the name? So it's perfectly poking her, and so she turned and she says, well, I said Mani. The dog's name was Mani, and Rinpoche said, you didn't say the whole name. You didn't say the whole name, right? And so my friend's telling me this, laughing and going like, wah wah. She didn't tell. And then Rinpoche said to her, it might be the only time that those people would have heard the whole mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. They weren't really Buddhists. They can't. And he said the only time they'd hear the mantra. So really, again, all these things, and sometimes you hear that story from another student, like when she told me, and that went in for me about, okay, that's why it's like you have to do the whole thing. You can't kind of shortcut stuff sometimes. It's really powerful to think about it. And so we had a good laugh about that. Okay, let's go on. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. So basically, the Buddha's in meditation. This conversation goes on between two disciples. And then the Buddha has given the teaching, and then he comes out of the meditation and says, great, you did a good job, like that. But he was there the whole time, kind of creating this dialogue, just so we could now read this. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And that completes that sutra. And there's a lot more. We often clear obstacles, and we're going to go to the short mandala offering. Yes, okay. So imagine you're making your most precious offerings so we can have some teachings on emptiness. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Nirataya Ni. Refuge and bodhicitta before the teaching. So let's just really think. We'll read twice in English, once in the phonetics. Really think about the words we're saying. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. O Sangye Chodanto Kicho Namla, Janchu Bardu Dagni Kyap Suchi, Dagi Chenyingi Peso Namki, Trola Pencher Sangye Dru Parshon. So for those of you who may just be joining, I mentioned if you're interested in learning more about emptiness, to please start with the thinner, simpler Lam books like The Essential Nectar and The Essence of Refined Gold, 2 different books, easy to read, easy to understand. Look at the emptiness parts of those in addition to the whole book. And then we might move into Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. But another book I recommended is Insight into Emptiness. Insight into Emptiness, Geshe Jampa Tekchog. Wisdom Publication sells it, Amazon sells it. So really helpful to slowly go through. And there's many books on emptiness. So take your time, really study. You do need classroom hours are helpful on emptiness. And then to learn to effectively meditate on emptiness. And I did put on the sheet that was sent out to you some suggestions. They're just suggestions on how to get practice started. There is a guided meditation I lead on emptiness. But you could also go on the same sheet, Venerable Thubten Children. She also has guidance on that audio you can listen to, and many other guides on there to explain things like that. It's really helpful. So we were discussing last week, as a refresher, sorry, thank you. Thanks very much. We were discussing how the pen exists. Just using this basic pen here. We can show it online. Once again, and just as a refresher, here's where we get hooked. Emptiness is, again, a lack of inherent nature, a lack of inherent existence. We're not used to those words, inherent nature, okay? It's a reification. I'm using synonyms. It's a reification of everything you experience. You concretize things, another synonym. That things have another synonym, intrinsic value. These are all synonyms for inherent nature. An independent existence, a permanent existence, okay? Nothing exists like that. But this is what we lob onto everything based on fundamental ignorance in our consciousness. Okay. And what I mean by ignorance is you're not stupid. I mean a misknowing of reality. We misinterpret, we misexperience reality. Okay. And we project onto it a concrete, solid, unchanging experience onto everything, especially ourselves. Okay. And that's the source of a lot of your suffering. Most of your suffering is that. The misknowing. And then because there's a misknowing, right? I grasp at the eye to hold on to it forever. May it never perish. When it starts perishing, I am terrified. I freak out. I get angry. I get jealous. I mean, all the delusions arise from the fundamental ignorance. Okay. And I overly cherish that experience of the eye. So you have self-grasping, right? And you have self-cherishing. So incredible suffering from those experiences. So what we have to do is analyze how we really exist, how the self exists. And 84,000 different discourses, sutras, the Buddha gave, 84,000 that he gave in his lifetime, were all for the point to get you to realize emptiness. That's how important it is. Okay. So whether you come from the Theravadan tradition and you're learning in that thing, you get to the Mahayana tradition, doesn't matter which tradition, there were different teachings he gave, right, for different levels of disciples, different types of disciples, whatever would hook your mind to get you thinking. And then finally, these teachings on the nature of reality. But all of it was designed to get you there, to get you to have a direct perception of emptiness. Then everything changes. Then everything changes. Right. And I think one time there was an interview I saw with His Holiness the Dalai Lama where they asked him about an attainment of bodhicitta, because you have the 2 wings of the bird, you have an attainment of bodhicitta, okay? And one thing I just wanted to say after our prayers was to really, let's think about our motivation, is that hopefully we're here tonight to direct our energy as best as we can, okay, in an appropriate way, that'll help us be together for the emptiness teachings, to listen well, that I can give the discourse well, that we have the karma for that, to listen well, that we can really soak it deeply into our consciousness, plant seeds of that in our mind that wake us up to want to study emptiness more, to want to meditate on emptiness more, for the real reason, so we can get enlightened to benefit all living beings. So it's really for that purpose that we're here together right now, hopefully. And hopefully you have the same purpose like that. Okay, so we have this misknowing, this misunderstanding, and the more we can start to poke at reality. And one thing I asked you to do last week was to see everything as a product. And this is something you do in between emptiness meditation. If you're on a retreat where you're just meditating on emptiness over and over and over each session, in the break times, which are often more important than the actual sessions, you don't want to have the mind drop where you're slowly going into emptiness. Okay, it takes the edges off the world, frankly, gives you more space to deal with your problems when you understand the problem is not as concretized as we make it. Okay, so in those meditations, as you're doing it, and then you have a break and you have tea or you have lunch if in a formal retreat, and what happens is the mind tends to sink back into ordinariness. So the break times are important to keep the mind, to keep in the break time, to still remember emptiness and to look at everything more as a product. So you just look around the room here, look around your space. Everything comes from something else, right? Everything's made up of components, right? Anybody finding something that's not? So be honest, look at, we can even say rug. Rugs seem solid, or flooring. We went through this last week. Okay, but it's components made up of all kinds of different things, materials, a design, fabric, if it's carpet, threads, the things that make up the threads. And if you want to go down to a molecular level, molecules moving around, and each of those molecules, okay, can be further broken down. Let's think about it. Can be further broken down into parts, smaller components, everything. So when some of us grew up, my memory as a kid, one of the smallest building blocks in physics they were talking about was called the atom, right? Do you remember that? Well, they've since broken that down, right? Okay, and they're going to continue to break it down. So it seems like Einstein knew this. I think Einstein was pretty enlightened being in some ways, had some insights into this structure. You can further and further break everything down. So here, I'll give you the second part of it. So there's really nothing there, because everything can be further broken down. Okay. However, okay, that's ultimate reality. There is nothing there that exists inherently. You will not find anything concretely there. Okay. So that terrifies some people. Okay. But on the other hand, dependent arising. You never have emptiness without dependent arising, meaning there is a conventional reality that somehow that physical structure has a way of coming together in a certain thing that supports Margaret. There's a body, mind and body, and all your thoughts and all the subtle mind going on, all components of that, your body, all the cells, and that functions. And then you have to take care of this. You can't just say it doesn't exist at all. So you have emptiness, but how does it exist? I don't need to take myself so seriously because I don't exist inherently. I'm energy passing through space and time. I'm energy. Okay. So why don't we lighten up? We're trying to get enlightened anyway. Okay. And so it really helps to kind of give space. Your boss is yelling at you. Okay. He doesn't exist inherently as evil and horrible. And, this simply, again, when we analyze the head of the boss, there's a hole here that sound comes out. Isn't it interesting? There's sound coming out of this right now that I'm interpreting as negative. He's yelling at me. I don't like that. I don't like that. Okay. But then you want to add more of Buddhism. But the reason he's yelling at me, it came from my mind. I created the cause for that. It's painful right now. You might say, it's embarrassing. Or I don't really like this. Nobody likes to get yelled at. Okay. I'm just waking up. It came from my mind. Right? Let go. lighten up. It simply came from my mind. If I don't like it right now, I have a little purification going on. Well, that's a good thing. If you're at a higher level, that's a good thing. That's great. And then I also want to remind myself, this is how emptiness works in our life. I want to remind myself not to react negatively back to the boss, because that's where this came from in the first place. So if I don't want to get yelled at again, don't yell back. Don't yell back, okay? Don't say something negative back. Don't try to get vengeance back at that person, whether you strike at them verbally, physically, whether you go around your office and tell everybody what a jerk they are. All that just creates negativity in your mind. This is what Buddhism says. It's what Tibetan Buddhism says. So emptiness gives you that space to kind of say, my boss doesn't really exist as inherently horribly as he appears to me. That's an appearance. That's not reality. That's not reality. And the real reality is ultimately emptiness. There's nothing there. There's no boss there. There's no boss there. But yes, there's a configuration of fleshy oblong thing we call the head with some hair on it, circles of color here, this open, sound. There's a torso, 4 appendages. That's a reality. There they are in front of me. Something out there like that. Inherently, nothing. Nothing there. Okay. We project onto everything. We project onto everything. And every one of you has a different interpretation. Every one of you has a different interpretation of this room, the deities, me, whatever's happening at computer. Okay. Now there's some conventional reality. If I say computer, then everybody might look here. Yeah, we know we have some conventions, an agreement. We have an agreement. But we all have different experiences of everything. So sometimes you do join with people and you share an idea and you both feel the same way. Of course, like that. But we get so invested and take ourselves so seriously and everything, and anything that threatens that kind of reality for us, we suffer tremendously. Tremendously. That. And it's hard, the stressors and things. For instance, if your kid is sick, your kid's struggling through something, it's the hardest thing, our kids, most attachment to our kids. It's what we have the biggest attachment to. So it's really hard if they're struggling. Okay. And then you realize they have their own karma unfolding, right? Totally separate from you. But you also have karma that you're the mother. So you've got the karma to have this experience with the kid. Many people have like that. So you have this karma going, and then you can say, and then all you can do, what are you going to do? Your kid is sick. What do you do? Anybody online? What's your activities? Let's be realistic. What action will we take?
You do the best you can. You take him to a doctor,
That's it. Right there. You do the best you can. There's your answer. You do the best you can. And that's going to be different for everybody. Right? But you're going to do the best you can. You might research doctors. You might look at this. You might go to that. You go to another specialist and you ask your kid how they're feeling. And are they going to participate? Some kids don't. Some kids don't want to do the thing. You say you have a stomach disorder. They're not supposed to eat this, and then they eat this. I had a friend, her kid needed open heart surgery. Young guy, like 20 years old, open heart surgery, this thing, went through it. And then, before pre-op, all the open heart surgery, you can't eat this and you can't eat that. And she takes off work and she came back in from some major conference, open heart surgery, planned the whole thing around it for weeks. Morning of the surgery, they went over the whole thing with him. That, he can't eat anything, can't drink, whatever. And they're waiting before they're taken in, and they're waiting in the waiting room, she and her husband, and he wanders off and they find him around the corner, he just had a candy bar. Went to the machine and got a candy bar. And they said, we can't do the surgery today. And it was set up for almost months, set up, She said, I wanted to kill him, So, I mean, this is the stuff, this goes on all the time. So, and you're just going to show up. And they rescheduled and the whole thing. And then he had the surgery. It was very successful. Like that, good recovery. But the things happen all the time. So your choice is, I'll do the best I can. Some parents can't. Parents are absent. Can't do. Okay. So that's what we do. So this is reality. You do it, but then you have to let go. You have to let go and you go, I've done everything I can do. and the stress is there. So then we want to practice with that stress. Emptiness helps us, let it go. I can't do anymore, and the stress is empty. The stress is empty as well, lacks any inherent nature of stressness. So you go, well, I feel my heart. So you really look for, where is the stress? Well, my heart's kind of constricted. That's your heart's beating, it's doing its thing. Stress has its effects. So everything that you can even go down to that level, and then just try to do some deeper breathing. It's a way to chill yourself out, to balance things out, but go look for the stress and you won't be able to find it. You won't be able to find, and you'll say, but I feel my throat's constricting, my heart's beating faster. I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm tossing, I'm turning, and, but where's the actual stress? So we label that stress. Again, mind just putting on another label. We project onto everything. We project onto everything and we divide and conquer. There's a duality to everything. This is good, this is bad. We put everything into boxes so we can feel safer. But we don't feel any safer. With emptiness, ultimate safety. You're free. You're free. The mind's unfettered. Because if you get attacked, worst case scenario, you get attacked. Let's say, and I hope you never do. If you get attacked, or God forbid you're in a car accident. Let's hope it's not a bad car accident. But what happens, there are people that jump out of their car in anger at the other person. Okay? And there's people that are cringing as the other person runs over to yell at you. It wasn't even your fault. It wasn't even your fault. But you see different people's reaction. There's some people that get out of the car and realize, well, I had the karma today to be in a car accident. It looks like both of us are okay. Great. Wonderful. Right. And then you can gently get out of the car, right? There's another person, human being, sentient being. So another way to look at it, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, okay, and I gave a little clip over the weekend, when we took precepts on Tuesday, little clip of Rinpoche talking about we're doing this for sentient beings, all sentient beings. And so you can't get enlightened, by the way, without sentient beings. It's impossible, okay? So Buddhists depend on sentient beings. In fact, their enlightenment comes from sentient beings. Why? So Buddhists depend on bodhisattvas. They come from Buddhist saints, high-level beings, right? Practicing that wish to get enlightened to benefit all, okay? And that's bodhisattva's premise for being, is to cherish others more than themselves, okay? So how do they do it without sentient beings? They need sentient beings. And there's so many beings on our planet that need help. So it's perfect. It's perfect. So instead of our having like, I need to get myself through my day and it's all about me, why don't you focus on others? Let's focus on others for a change. And you train your mind daily in that view. You can't keep it going all day long. But right now, probably, if I asked you, what percentage of your day do you spend focused on yourself? What percentage of your day would you say is spent focused on yourself? I think honestly, most people would say kind of in the 95% focus on ourselves. Anybody here agree? Okay. So let's say that's the premise. So what if I tried to just take half of that, exercise a little bit, half of it each day to kind of think about what's your experience? What happened to you today? How was your day today? Oh, you're hungry now? What would you like to eat? And what do you want? So we're not going to be able to do that all day. Our mind's tired and we don't have the habit. Okay. But what if I can just catch myself, mindfulness? I'm at work suddenly, and then I suddenly focus on someone. Instead of me saying, I need to go over there, I need to get that thing from them and get the report, and I go, well, I wonder what they're doing. How's their day going? Do you ever think to get them a cup of coffee? You want coffee, but what if you brought it for somebody else too? Right? We had these little exercises we used to do. Now you can't do it anymore. So you have toll roads here. You pay a toll in your car. So now you have the machine you go through. So in the old days, you had to pay. And there was a toll taker and they'd take the toll. So sometimes we would pay for the person behind us. We didn't know them, but it was so fun. You'd pay for them, okay, maybe not going over the Verrazano Narrows Bridge because it costs, $47, but no, but we would do this. And then you drive away and then you'd see them with the toll person, and then they go, and then there's a little exchange and then they look ahead at us at our carpool and they're like, You know, it's just such a sweet, there's so many things you can do like that all day long. Grocery store. Let somebody else in front of you that doesn't have many groceries. Let the mother with the screaming baby. So these exercises where the mind turns out of its solid, concrete structure. Me. And you start training yourself. It takes time. It's hard work. It's hard work. But you get so much happiness. So you have to try a little bit like that. Okay. So just look at that, poke that projection all day long. Oh, look, I'm having an interpretation about this thing like this. That's interesting. Somebody else having a little bit different view of that than I'm having. A little bit different view. So it opens up a lot of spaciousness with people, a lot of options, a lot more options in the concreteness. So let's go back to the pen, how we analyze with emptiness too. And again, a pen is mundane, but I mentioned that the pen comes into existence based on causes and conditions, that people were writing, recording history, and then we go to modern days. Someone invented plastic, make a factory to reproduce, mass produce these pens to make money. Okay, I think we're clear on that. Another way the pen exists, comes into existence, is based on its parts. So last week we analyzed the parts of the pen that are really clear to see here: the cap, the plastic tube, the ink cartridge inside, the ink, the molecules of the ink, and the tube and the cap, and the bottom and the top and the sides. I think you got it. Okay? Parts of the pen. Okay? And then the highest school says the pen comes into existence based on a valid basis of designation. A valid basis of designation. Let's think about this. And in this case, the valid basis of designation of this pen is a plastic cylindrical tube filled with ink that writes. So I'll say it one more time: a plastic cylindrical tube filled with ink that writes. Okay, that appears to our consciousness. Okay, it appears to our consciousness. So in this case, your eyes are taking in this information, whether you're on Zoom or in the room. Your eyes take in certain data, information. Okay, plastic cylindrical tube filled with ink that writes. And based on your being a human being in this part of the world with English language, you see that information first through the eye, the organ, okay? And then it connects with the sense consciousness that is in your mind, not in your brain, in your mind. And it's the sense consciousness, and in this case, visual sense consciousness, that allows your eye to see a certain configuration. But it's the most subtle imprints in your most subtle mind, okay, that affect the visual sense consciousness and all your sense consciousnesses, whether it's smell, taste, touch, things like that. And so what it does is it dictates how you'll see this pen. So those subtle imprints you've made from your past activities, body, speech, and mind, have layered imprints in your consciousness that cause you to see the pen in a certain way. And it really causes you to see the valid basis of designation in a certain way. And based on what that data is for you, there's a gap, there's a space, okay? And then your mind labels on the configuration. And in this case of those of us in the room or on Zoom with our language, then we see the information, and almost instantaneously, the label is placed by your mind, pen. Almost instantaneously, the label is placed by your mind, pen, and the pen comes into existence. Emptiness would say, ultimately, there's no pen there at all. There's no pen there at all. But conventionally, I'm holding a pen. Okay. But emptiness, its ultimate reality is there's no pen there at all. And the reason is, if it inherently exists as pen, which is what we kind of impute on the pen, concrete, solid, unchanging pen, there for all time. Okay. If it exists like that, inherently exists, and again, frozen in time and space, then it has to be pen. for all beings, for all beings. And again, if I throw this on the floor and a dog comes in the room, it's a chew toy. No pen there at all. Okay. So pen is mundane. So the first problem I have is the misknowing of the pen. I miss the gap of my mind labeling on this configuration, pen. I don't see the gap because my ignorance, my misknowing covers over the gap. So instantaneously, I label, the label goes, my mind says pen, okay. But what appears back to my consciousness? So there's a labeling process, okay. My mind labels on this configuration, but what appears back instantaneously is gotcha, okay, is an object of negation, an object that doesn't exist. What appears back to my consciousness, an ignorant consciousness, is an inherently existent pen, appears back to my consciousness. Pen again is mundane, but here's the other part of the problem. I misknow the reality, the data. I misunderstood that there's a labeling process, right? There's no inherent existence in pen. I misunderstand all of that, okay? And then because I misunderstand it, okay, the next moment I grasp onto it, mine. And there's where all the suffering starts, okay? So pen is mundane, but my kid, my computer, my car, my dog, my apartment, me. Anything that threatens that, you suffer. You're miserable. You want to attack back. You want to get them back. You're sad. You're depressed. You're jealous. You're angry. You're fearful. Just because we're holding everything to be concretely existent. Is everybody with me? So it's hard to understand this labeling process. Look around the room. Everything, you're labeling everything. What's kind of fun, once in a while, you get a little something you can't define. It's very rare. It usually happens when something's obscured from your view. And one example I had years ago in the summer at our center in California, I was in the kitchen. We had a big kitchen. The light was not on in the kitchen, but it was like afternoon. So it was dim in part of the kitchen. And a friend of mine was across the kitchen in the summer. And she was standing like this, right? And she said to me across the kitchen, "Do you want one? You know, do you want one?" And I couldn't get a clear visual view because of the light. There wasn't enough light in the kitchen. So it was a great moment because I didn't know what one was. I didn't know what this was. So I had no, and all I saw was this little round purple thing. But again, what came to my consciousness, so valid basis of designation was a circular purple thing. What would you call that?
Hand grenade?
Hand grenade. Okay, here we've got hand grenade. No, this is how it works. Hand grenade, one person said. Let
Fanta.
me open it up. What's that?
Fanta. A Fanta.
Fanta?
Yeah.
What's a Fanta?
The soda, the grape soda.
A soda? Okay, circular thing. So it's a little round ball. Okay,
Oh,
somebody
ball.
said Fanta, it's a soda. Somebody said hand grenade.
Grape.
What else? A grape?
No,
A plum?
grapefruit.
Grapefruit? Grapefruit is purple? Okay, maybe. Great. Different.
Blueberry.
Blueberry? Okay. So it was about the eggplant. There's another one. Okay. So for me, why this came into my mind, was hockey puck. I had hockey puck labeled onto it. So there's all these different labels we had just right then, just due to some obscuration in visual consciousness. We have an obscuration in our mental consciousness. That's why we don't see anything clearly, but we can still label, and we have agreements about the label: rug, floor. We're there, but here we have the whole, so it was great for me. All I could think of was like, why is she holding a hockey puck up? Do I want that? She said, do you want one? It was a plum. It was a plum. Is what she was, but it's great when you have this moment where I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't have a name for it, but we have many names. We have many names, but just think about it. I've got an obscuration in my mental consciousness. So please use that in everyday life. This is where it's helpful. You get a story going. Somebody hurt you. This happens all the time. Somebody upset you, right? Now you can have personal upset, and you also have world upset. You read the news and you go, oh my God. You just say this 4-letter word, Gaza, and everybody goes, oh, Ukraine, South Sudan, like it's all these people suffering. All these people suffering. So you can get invested and you can be angry at this person and angry at that person, and you go out to lunch with your friends and you're yelling about this and, right? It's not peaceful for your mind. And it separates everything, and you don't know, you vomit your opinion out there, but somebody just wanted to have a nice lunch. They don't really want to talk about that. So we have to take the big picture into consideration, what's happening. These things are going on in our world, and I step up and own that part of it's my responsibility. It's coming from my mind, right? I'm not a bad person, okay? But there's a reason I'm in this world system that has war and starvation and all the delusions operating and people hurting each other and on. But there's also beautiful things in my world. I created that too, right? So what I want to work on is, how do I face these negative things and show up with a somewhat stable mind? And the reason we want to have a stable mind is so that, think about the basis of our motivation. I want to help people. I want to make sure every day I can try to show up in a healthy way, mental and physical, to try to help as many people as possible. That's the crux of my motivation. I'm not a Buddha yet, so I'm not going to do it perfectly. And sometimes you get tired and you need breaks. Humans need breaks, and humans make mistakes. So when I make a mistake, I'll go back to my practice and learn from it, and then I want to come out. But I've met people that are so extreme in their thinking, in their talking, in their speaking, and how many people can you help in that space? So if you're too extreme, you alienate all these people. And if you're such a mess yourself, can't get yourself more together, you're not able to help either. So now it is some things. We have certain karma turns up, and sometimes you have some karma that turns up and you go through some period of depression. That's very common. You go through a period of you're having intense anxiety. Okay, so suddenly you've accessed some negative karma. That's all that's happening. You have accessed some negative karma. So if you want to ride the surfboard smoothly and you access your negative karma, you can kind of say, okay, I'm purifying now. This is a good thing. So every time we suffer, Tibetan Buddhism says you're going through some purification. Okay, now we are not masochists. Please don't misunderstand. We are not masochists. So it doesn't mean we sign up for suffering over and over again and that I harm myself. No, absolutely not. Buddhism is not about harming anyone. But suffering, because we're in samsara, suffering is going to turn up. How do I want to deal with it? Do I want to fold in on myself and collapse and have a breakdown all the time and freak out on other people constantly and needing help and over? Right? Then I can't really help anybody. Okay. So the more I can kind of go, wow, this is really big. Like, if God forbid, I hope you don't, let's say you get a cancer diagnosis. You go to the doctor and they go, this is pretty bad. I just had a friend yesterday, not a good lung cancer situation, just got diagnosed. I just saw her less than a year ago in India, met her in India. I mean, re-met her with the group she was bringing through. So now she has lung cancer. She's not an old woman, I don't even know if she's 50. She has a family like that. So what's she going to do? She's incredibly bright. She goes, well, I got my medical team. She's doing, figuring out what does she need to do? What's the treatment going to be like? There is a treatment. That's good. She's got some solutions. There's a lot more they can do sometimes with some lung cancers. So she's proceeding, and then, and she works in a local government office. And she goes, and then I'm just going to go back to my job. And, when I can around the treatment, I'm going to go back to my job because I have people that I'm serving. So I'm like, you go, girl. Right? It's going to keep her buoyant. She's ready to engage. Okay. You hit a road bump. Sometimes the road bumps are big. Mind's balance, bright attitude, like that. It's one way to deal with it. Now, again, and she said, I have to see how the treatment will go. So someday she may be wiped out. Don't go to work. Rest. Like that. Someday you feel sick, then you rest. Balance. Keep the balance. Because sometimes we get sick. We need to take care of ourselves then. It's a sign like that. You get a cold, you get a flu, then stay in bed and rest. things like that. Something more serious? Okay. And then it helps other people really appreciate when you're healthy. Like that. So all the time. So how do we keep the mind balanced? So because the motivation's in place, keeps you buoyant, really keeps you buoyant. That's how we keep how do we show up with reality and what am I seeing? So then what happens is something doesn't go your way. Something doesn't go your way. Okay. I'm just curious, what are your responses mentally? What do you do? Something isn't working out. What's your thinking process? If anyone cares to say, what's your thinking process? And also, if somebody's interfering, it appears they're interfering, your workplace, your neighborhood, talking to someone recently about a neighbor of theirs. We have issues sometimes in our communities, right? Okay. And they're really bothering you. I had a friend, they cut down the tree, the bush that was on my side. That bush was there. My husband planted the bush. Her husband's died since. Okay. What are you going to do? So think about your thought process in this. Anybody, what are your thought process? Something like that. What do you go to?
Well, one thing I have at work, my name is Steve. Nice
Hi.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Venerable Amy.
Amy, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So I've had this thing at work with my schedule. So they were giving me a schedule that I had some problems with, and I have a medical issue that has to do with it. So I spoke to I work in a call center. So I spoke to the center, the director or the manager, whatever.
Mhm.
And I talked to her and she said she tried to get it fixed. So it appeared that it was fixed. And then like it was changed for next week. And then when they updated the schedule for the next week, I'd been put back on the one that I'm already in.
Right.
Or there was a thing where we had open enrollment for new employees and mine ran out on October 30th. And there was an enrollment I wanted to do, and they were asking me questions because I wanted to get supplemental dental and I have Medicare. So they were asking me questions about my current coverage, but the questions didn't seem to have any answers. And this came up in July or August. And the first time I got somebody offering to help was today.
Yep. Yeah. So
And,
very common. I mean, these are
yeah.
really, especially you're dealing with healthcare in the United States. It's so again. So look at, and you might get a story going about these people, like they don't know what they're doing. We start from they're interfering. It's taking all my time. And you have someone in the phone, and we start with they don't know what they're doing. I've heard people say they're stupid. You might even
Outrageous.
they're this is an outrageous system. This doesn't work. They don't train people well. They have these inadequate, and you start all these things. But here's a human being just like you who wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. Okay. And then they're at another call center taking these calls. Okay. And call centers are hard. It's the same rote stuff. And you get a lot of people that are on hold for a long time and they finally get you. And then they're irritated when they finally get you. So they're not designed well. It's not, the whole process of it is not great. It's not such a personal thing. And these people aren't often well trained. So, but they're just like you. They're another person like you who's just trying to have their job, to make their money, to pay their mortgage, pay their rent, buy their food, and want to have some leisure time, just like us. No
What about
different.
the callers,
Sorry?
the people that are calling into the call center.
The people calling into the call center, but the people answering the calls, they're just like us too. Same thing. But we start a story, negative, 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 negative about them. First of all, you don't even know them. How about some kindness with them? Right? I think personally, call center work for a lot of people can be really boring. Okay. Some people really like it. Some people are really good at it, and they're very bright. And sometimes I've gotten some people on these lines and they're really nice. They're very friendly. And, and I think, God, how many people you talk to all day long and the same things? And some people, and so just the more we can think about them again, and I don't want to create more negativity, but start first. The first thing is start watching the stories in your mind about them. What stories in my mind have I gotten going? about them. They're this. And so why not create and choose, I'm going to try to have a healthy relationship with this person. Okay. Now there are people, I've been on lines, let's say an airline I called to get something, or you call some agent. I've had this with Apple calling about a computer problem. And you call, and occasionally I get somebody that I don't think really knows what they're doing. It appears, okay, but my mind's limited, okay. But then I might say to them, just that friendliness. How long have you been there? And you get people that say 10 years, and I've gotten people that said 1 year. For me, there's a good chance the 10-year person might have some more information. They usually do. So if I get somebody that says 1 year, it's my prerogative to go, oh, how do you like it? I might just say, oh, it's great, or this or that, or, we'll have a joke about it. And then I'll go, okay, well, thanks very much. I think I'm okay right now. Why? I want to get off from them, and I'm going to call back, see if I can get somebody that's been around longer. That's your prerogative, but it's all very pleasant. I'm not blaming them. You don't know anything. You've only been there a year. You can also say it like a senior manager at some of the places. Can I speak to a supervisor? You might get somebody more experienced. It's your prerogative. But I've also done that where I hung up at the airline. No, they can't help me. No, they're going to change a thing. They're going to charge me for it. We can't do it. We can't do it. Okay. Thanks very much. Really appreciate your help. Hang up. I call back and I get somebody that goes, I'm going to take care of this for you. It's all free. Don't worry. That's our choice. But you can always do it pleasantly. Why? Layers, pleasant seeds in your consciousness creates harmony on the planet, right? There's a human being on the other end of that phone, just like you, who wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. What my ignorance says is I can start other stories about them that aren't true, negative stories, things that aren't accurate. You have to check your stories. So just notice the stories coming from your mind, okay? First, you're observing them, but try to observe without overreacting in them. And then go back and go, what else could this be? If my story is inaccurate, what else could be out there? Well, the person wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer just like you. Person's a conscious being and you need them to get enlightened. And I don't want to create any more hostility in the world. And maybe I can help them and we can be kind to each other and it's a much more pleasant day and on and on. And I don't know anything about this person. They might be really struggling in life and have a sick kid and have financial worries and hate their job and have a horrible boss and all those kind of things. So you want to layer reality in there to really, and then with emptiness, that person doesn't exist at all the way they're appearing to us. Even if it's a voice on the phone, no inherently existent voice there at all. Completely lacks any concrete, unchanging, independent nature like that. And they only exist in dependence on there being sound qualities, tones, depending on that decibel, that tone. All that is creating that sound coming through the phone right now. There's nothing really concretely there. Am I making sense? People following? Really helps to start thinking, but the more you study emptiness, read about it, you start thinking a little bit more in this way, please.
So I watch TikToks every now and then, and one was specifically about call centers, a different
watch
strategy.
What,
TikTok?
TikTok?
It's like an app
Yeah.
for watching little
Oh,
videos.
TikTok, I've heard of.
But in some country somewhere, they had an interesting strategy, which was to have like their little kid give like a little introduction of like the person who would be on the call answering, the complaint or whatever it was.
And have the kid
Call
answer
center.
instead.
Yeah, they'd be like, this is my mom, so and so, she likes this and this, and she's gonna help you. And apparently it did really well for the interaction.
Uh-huh, right. Interesting. Yeah, and also it's like if you sometimes think that sometimes you get somebody appearing on the other end that really is clueless. They really don't know what's going on. I'm really like, no, I don't think that, or they ask you 6 times, like, what's the same number, the account or something. But the thing is, we're all a little lost. So if you see them in a sense also as a child that needs extra help, it's easier than thinking an adult that should know better. But sometimes we're lost like kids, like that. So it's a shame they also have to have the kid introducing, like, why can't we just feel that way about adults? But we layer a whole other trip on on adults like that, that we should know better. But it's one thing to think about, and I'll take Sheil's question in a moment. It's one thing to think about, and also when we get into the sense of what's going on in the world right now, and some of the leaders that seem to be perpetuating some harm, bigger harm in the world, and people have a lot of judgments and things about it, and hostility and fear and anger and depression around all that's going on. So, but I also think, and I mentioned this before, if you are a leader of these big countries, the potential, if you're not doing things, and if you don't know, if you don't have an expansive mind, if you're not running from enlightened leadership, really wishing to help a greater good, okay, think about the mistakes you can make. They're much bigger than mistakes I can make in my little world, right? Huge mistakes, great harm. So how can we not have compassion for them? You know, what they're creating for their consciousness for the future, let alone the greater harm that's going on, you know. And sometimes they might not know what to do at this point. I mean, I was just talking last week about the war in Ukraine, that we thought, my memory when it started was it looked like it was going to be over in 2 to 3 days, that Russia would invade and that would be the end, that there was no resistance from Ukraine, that Russia seemed to have all the, you know, all the military equipment and everything. And so it really looked like, wow, this is, you know, they'll take down another country, and here we are, you know, what, 2, 3 years later, it's far from over. And this is not at all what Putin wanted, you know. So here now he's in this complete mess, really not sure what to do. All these Russians have died, you know, as a result. So it was not at all what he intended. And now he's stuck. And now he's alienated himself even from his buddies like Xi, and, you know, who really wants the war over, and it's affected the whole. So again, these things happen. And even as a world leader, you're like, you know, I don't know what to do now, you know, like that. So it can be very challenging. Sheil, please.
Hi, Venerable. I just wanted to clarify. I'm sorry I didn't hear when you said that round thing was purple. I was daydreaming, I think. So sorry about that. Um, what I wanted to understand is when you spoke about the pen, and at the end you said, "Oh, what do? We say that it's mine." Like, how would be a skillful way that I wouldn't like latch on and say mine? Like, I look at all the things in my home, and yes, I do say mine. So, what would be a skillful way for me, now that you've spoken about emptiness, for me to not reflect everything in here is mine?
Sometimes it's some basic language you can start to get used to, that can be a little harder, but for instance, it could be the house I live, the house where I live instead of my house, the car I drive instead of my car, you know, that has a little less ownership, a little less solidity to it. And the other thing is just to understand that there's nothing wrong with having nice things and having a nice home. It's just how attached you are to them. So, you know, do you need to spend, how much time do you want to spend in, you know, looking for, you know, weeks, months, years for that particular sofa to fit into the particular room of that shade, that color, and then you're going to have it reupholstered because the color wasn't quite the fabric you wanted in the color. And I mean, how much time is it good enough to just get some things that you enjoy? They're attractive, and great, and you put the thing together that and it's not, you know that it's degenerating right now as well, those things. You can't take those things with you. So just looking at our hold on those things, how it makes us suffer, you know, cherishing those things. What would it be like not to have? I mean, sometimes there's a couple I met some years ago in India traveling, and I had my backpack. It wasn't huge, but it was my backpack and my stuff in the backpack. And in India in those days, you'd be very worried about things being stolen, especially when you were traveling on the train, and we would have to lock our bags on the train. There's places underneath you lock your suitcase and things like that. And many people I knew getting in and out of taxis, and they lost their camera, and you know, things would happen. And then I met a couple older couple, and they had these kind of larger shoulder bags. And that's all they were traveling with. I was so amazed. I was so impressed. And they said they had a change of clothes and they had a few other items, their passport, obviously, and their money but they had a few items, and then they would wash one set of clothes every couple of days, and they'd have the other set, and occasionally they'd get maybe another little top or something, but they just said, they didn't really have anything to worry about because, and there I was, like lugging a heavy backpack, and then being that, and then I'd buy another book, so again, I think it's that attachment to it. It doesn't matter, but can I just realize a lot of these things are cumbersome in our mind. And I've known people that, I have a friend in New York, New Yorkers live in small spaces, and there are people that have been in an apartment renting for 30 or 40 years. I know people in New York like this. And so a lot of people accumulate over 30 to 40 years. So what was a small apartment, but had some space, is just, when I visit this friend, every inch is covered. It's not comfortable to stay there. There's not really room, even though she's always inviting me to stay. And I really enjoy her and stuff, but there's not room for me to put one thing down, and I don't know if she realizes it or not, but it's part of this thing is she can't really do a lot of other things because of this apartment. So it is now, granted, she wants to live in New York. It's very expensive and she has a very good deal. So those are choices you make, that she's kind of, stuck there, and then she'll show me all the stuff in there. Things when she cleaned out her mother's house that are there, that are more stuff now and more things and more attachment. And so just look at your relationship with it. And it can be really heavy in the mind, I find, like that.
One time I had to move, and one of the things that was in one of my closets was an oar. Like for a
Like
boat.
a boat oar.
Yeah, I go, I mean,
All right.
what was I doing with an oar?
Yeah, and we keep I mean, you just, and some people's have the space to keep things. So for a while you keep it, and then you have to make, decisions. Is it good enough? And can I simplify? A lot of us, my niece is an organizer. If you want organizing, she's very good. She's in the Philadelphia area, but she'll talk to you online. She's great. And she realized at a young age, all this stuff you accumulate, and you spend how many years, 25 years accumulating stuff, right? To spend another 25 years of your life getting rid of it. Why not practice Dharma? So if you keep it simple from the beginning, keep things simple. And one of the things to develop Shine is to have a feeling, one of the things you want to have is you're happy with whatever you have and you have very little desires. You're just satisfied with what you have. It's good enough. Like that. And some people have a lot of that, and some people. So it's also, if there's nothing wrong with getting a nice house, saying that you want to have a nice space, you want to have some nice stuff in the house. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's just like, does it become obsessively where that's all you're doing? And then this, and you got this, because it can just take over your life. With some people that I know, it's never done. They have a beautiful house, but there's always another little thing they're trying to do with it. I remember these friends I had that built a house, and she just wasn't happy with each. Like, I thought it was beautiful when I went, and she goes, well, the thing in the bathroom, the sink needs to be changed. And, I'm like, so it's always, sometimes the mind's never satisfied, and that interferes with your practice. One thing I do want to say so I want to go back to the pen for a second. Here's where we get hooked, and I'll take some more questions. But does that help, Sheil? How to think about?
Oh, yes, of course. I remember, I think Venerable Rabina saying that Lama Zopa would say not my leg, he would just say the leg. And that just stuck with me. Like, he didn't use the word my. And so I'm just working on, I'm attached a lot to everything in my home here. And I'm just trying to lessen the attachment. Yeah.
Yeah, and also you can, if anyone, there's all these different decluttering things now because everyone's cleaning out their parents' houses, that so many people I know. So some people got into are familiar with Marie Kondo, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I read one of her books about decluttering, and it's the, her method of letting go with joy, So it's interesting. And my niece wanted to watch, she had a program, and we watched one of the episodes. My niece wanted to watch it with me of cleaning out and how she'd go into people's homes. And so she has her style of doing something that I thought was quite effective with certain things. And when you want to part with something, like acknowledge it and look at it, my favorite sweatshirt, and then think, so my niece has a system, some of you do this, I'm sure, that she has a system where you have clothes you hang up on a hanger, the hanger's backwards, the reverse. The hook is this way. So what she does after a year is the clothes that are, so when she puts something back and she wears it, she puts it back this way. So if there's clothes a year later that's still like this, it means she hasn't worn them in a year. Get rid of it. Right. And then there's other friends I have, think about simplicity. So one of my friends said, she just got this new sweatshirt, and she goes, yep, and this one's going out to the thrift store. Like, so that way there's not, not like, I have a friend that, really bad hoarder. I have a friend where her bedroom, there's just very neatly stacked up on the shelves are mounds of t-shirts. They're just, four massive, it's like you're going into a t-shirt store to buy t-shirts. How many t-shirts can you wear in a year? But it's just but everything is like that in the apartment. There's everything she has is each one. There's this tons of them. So, and she'll say to me, I know I need to clean, it's heavy for the head. The people that I know that have this stuff, it's in your mind. It's always there. I need to clean it out. I need to do it at some point. And so much lighter to have the space, but everybody's wired a little differently. So you could have a look at some of those books to pare down a little bit and see if you feel better like that. So one thing I wanted to go back to the pen. Here's where we get hooked. See, there's the pen. Okay. So when we looked in the parts of the pen for the pen, we did that last week. So the pen is not the cap. That has a different name. If I held up the plastic cylinder, that's not pen, because it doesn't function as a pen. The ink cartridge has a different name, ink cartridge. Okay. And it's a smaller thing than a pen. It's not really, and if I took the ink out, that's not pen. Okay. So we slowly go through and you look at all the parts. A pen is easy to do. You look at all the parts and you really identify. So see if you follow me. There is no pen in any of the parts. There is no pen in any of the parts of the pen. Okay. Then what happens is people get confused and they go, well, okay, we know that, but it's the collection. Okay. When you put all parts together, then people say the pen's there, but we just looked in all the parts. Okay. So follow me. We just looked in all the parts and there was no pen in any of the parts of the pen. How can you put all the parts where there is no pen? Because we just looked. How can you put all those parts together where there is no pen and then say the pen is there? We already looked. There was no pen. Do you follow me? So what comes together, what the collection is, it's not pen, it's a valid basis of designation. To be labeled by the mind, pen. And then the pen comes into existence. But there's no pen there. There's no inherently existent pen there. Okay. So just get clear about, be cautious about that collection. It's a collection that fools us. It's a collection that seems so solid. It's a collection that when my mind immediately, instantaneously labels on that collection, whatever the thing is, my daughter, my dog, my house, but the next moment, what appears to the consciousness due to your ignorance is an inherently existent daughter, an inherently existent dog, an inherently existent house, concretely existing, independent of any causes and conditions, parts, or the mind labeling on a valid basis of designation. An unchanging thing, always existent, always that, and I'm overly involved, and then I grasp onto that. I need that. That exists. I want to embellish that. I want to hold that dear. I want that to be perfect. I want that to be happy. Right? That's the source of our suffering. So I want to go back to one thing when Shil brought up Lama Zopa Rinpoche. One other thing it reminded me of, thank you, is another way to think, and that he would teach so many different angles of emptiness. And one thing that was really helpful for me another time, there's a long thing of, you can look at old videos of Rinpoche from the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. That's our archive of all the teachings of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe. lywa.org. You can find it online. It's in the Boston area. And you can watch old videos where Rinpoche talked about the table. For years, it was the table. How does a table exist? You have a table. Okay. You have a table. And he would go through that. But then years later, one time we were sitting, Vajrapani, there's 3 lights, spotlights over the person teaching. I remember right here. And Rinpoche was sitting there one night talking. And what he started to say is, when you think about emptiness and dependent arising, okay, Rinpoche would say, there's a light in the room. He was talking about one of these, there's a light in the room, okay, dependent arising. Okay, conventionally existent light in the room, okay. Rinpoche would point and he'd say, but there's no light there, emptiness. That it lacks any inherent concrete lightness. Okay, there's a light in the room, but there's no light there. Like that. So it's another way you can think about it. No inherently existent light there, but there's light in the room. Conventionally, we see that. There's many different things we could talk about emptiness. Any other questions, comments? I know this is short, so we're running out of time. Please, Alex.
I just have a question
Can I
about,
get a little bit more water? Is that possible? Thanks, my dear. Thank you so much.
I just have a
Yes.
question. When you start analyzing the pen and you go another level, then you start seeing the atoms. And then you go another level, you see the electrons. And the latest science discoveries are like vibrations of energy. So how to avoid going to nihilism, the extreme, that nothing
Because of dependent arising. That's why you never have emptiness without, there is a conventional existence that depends on causes and conditions to exist, that depends on their parts to exist. And electrons, atoms, they all have parts in order to exist, to function. And on the mind, labeling on a valid basis of designation. All of those things. So that's the most subtle dependent arising. So you always have to think about dependent arising, and that keeps you from one extreme view is nihilism, nothing exists. And the other extreme view that most of us are signed up for is reification or concretization. Everything exists concretely. That's how we kind of see stuff. So we poke at it with emptiness. No, it lacks that. And yet, because it's empty, it has to come from other things. It allows it to arise from other things. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
You have to keep thinking about it. You have to keep, but you never have one without the other, because then we get into nihilism. I don't exist. I don't matter. I can step in front of the bus. Doesn't matter if somebody abuses me. I don't exist. It very much matters. Yeah. Like that. If you
Thank
step
you.
in front of the bus, it will kill you. So you have to take care. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Quite is it, are we communicating a bit? I know it's true. You have to keep thinking about it and keep reading about it, studying a little bit more. We can talk. So I'm going to stop there. We can talk more about it other classes. I'm going to stop there because we're out of time. And I'd like to dedicate, it's really great, one of the incredible merit you can create by thinking about emptiness, going to a teaching on emptiness, talking about emptiness, studying, reading, meditating on emptiness can be really, really helpful. And it is one of the most profound parts of our philosophy, haven't found in really many other traditions. So it's very profound. So give yourself some time and space and look at some of the basic books at first till you understand that. And may we then dedicate that whatever positive energy or merit we've created from this time together, which is really special, can we invest it in our being able to move along that path to develop a direct perception of emptiness, to really have that firm understanding and be able to meditate well enough to develop that direct perception that will help us get enlightened quickly. But the real purpose is so we can benefit all living beings. And can we also dedicate for all the wars on the planet to end immediately, completely, for all the suffering beings, whoever needs additional healing, may they receive it right now, completely. And for the long lives of our precious teachers. So let's just do some of our dedication prayers. Can't seem to get rid of that. Okay. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. So Rinpoche says this meditation, this dedication with emptiness is one of the most important. Due to the merits accumulated over the 3 times, myself and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which are empty from their own side, may I, who is empty from my own side, achieve the state of enlightenment, which is empty from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are empty from their own side to that state as quickly as possible by myself alone. Because of all the merits of these 3 times created by me and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, sentient beings, may there be no wars, famines, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders, teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. For His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And we're just going to go to the prayer for Rinpoche to return. Let's see where, here we go. Nope, not that one. See, I can't seem to get the document.
Like me to share it?
That's okay. I'll bring it up in a sec. I just need to get the other one shut. Let's try this. One more time. Here we go. Maybe this one. Preview. Okay. for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's return, written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Stravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from mother living beings you suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, everyone online. And we have a class this weekend. So we have Tara on Saturday, a Tara practice day, a retreat, and then Sunday morning, and then Monday night, our last class for this time, like that. Please be well and enjoy, and don't forget about emptiness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Amy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venerable.
Night.
Thank you very much.